La da 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 da! Greetings all. Last Outrider back here again with apparently some form of emergency update because people are losing their shit about female Custodes. I think the only way I really find out what's going on in 40K these days is when I start getting emails saying, "What do you think of this? This just happened. That just happened. What do you think about it?" And so, not a surprise, I just started getting emails about female Custodes. And my first response to it is, quite honestly, what my response has always been. It hasn't changed. It's been the same for years. And I posted it on 2 different channels that asked me the question. And I'm just going to make a quick video here now saying what I posted. Warhammer 40K has been around for about 30 years. So, in that period of time, when do you become an expert on 40K? If you've been playing the game for 10 years, you could well call yourself an expert. If you've been playing the game for 20 years, you could well call yourself an expert on 40K. It's 20 years. That's an entire professional career. But that still only takes you back to 2004. If you're one of those transcendent Catan beings like myself who've been playing or known about the game since pre-launch, you have a different view of what Warhammer is, because I've seen it in all of its manifestations as they happened. Now, what I've noticed then is that what upsets people, what is lore, what is not lore, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, is 100% dependent upon when did you first pick up 40K. And when you first pick up 40K, the lore at that point in time is canon to you. And anything that then changes that afterwards becomes mind-blowingly awful. Well, if you apply that logic to someone like me who's been there since before the beginning, then I should lose my mind because Space Marines cannot pilot Titans. Oh my God, what do they do to the war? Space Marines can't pilot Titans? The world's fucking ending. They could. There was a time when Space Marines could pilot Titans. Now, that's unimaginable. So should I be upset? Now, what about the people, or more importantly, why aren't you upset about that? You're not upset about that because that hasn't been in the lore for over 25 years. It wasn't in the book when you picked it up. So therefore, it doesn't matter. And that's what I'm seeing. Everybody gets upset based upon the time that they pick up their first 40K book. Now, what I see here with Amazon, if I extend this analogy, is that when they put out this series, it's going to make a lot of first-time people pick up the book. Okay, so for a lot of those first-time people, the question needs to be, are there females in the 40K universe? Yes or no? We need to establish this fact right now because you're going to get a whole lot of first-time viewers and a whole lot of first-time players, and from that point on, they won't give a fuck about your past lore. When they picked up the book, this is the way it was. That's the way it's going to be. They would be upset if you removed it 10 years from now. That's what I see happening here. But let me go on. that this argument is obviously not going to work on a lot of people who just want to be upset. So let's do a lore, rules-based argument because we know the players like that. When Warhammer first came out, there were no Primarchs. There were no genetically engineered. Space Marines were not genetically engineered superhumans. From my standpoint, and from everybody that I remember playing with or talking to at the time when Warhammer came out, there was no problem with the concept of female Space Marines. It was even assumed to be a thing. Why do you say that? I say that because when it came out, Space Marines were described as monastic orders. So it was based upon, the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church's monastic orders are segregated by gender. Okay? So it was just assumed that if there's going to be fortress monasteries filled with, warrior monks, there would also be fortress nunneries filled with warrior nuns. And nobody gave a shit about this. In fact, the pictures in Rogue Trader showed Sister Sin and other females in power armor, and we just assumed, hey, the men go to a monastery, the women go to a nunnery. They both come out, they form their chapter. It is what it is. They're segregated by gender. That is the original thinking. That's what was portrayed in the art. It wasn't until the genetic engineering bullshit came about. Oh, and by the way, they were fucking cannibals. And the Emperor was a cannibal. And human sacrifice and blood drinking and eating of people as a ceremony to worship the Emperor was canon. Should I be upset that doesn't happen anymore in 40K? Where's the cannibalism, man? Where'd it go? I'm so sad. What is 40K without cannibalism? I just can't play it anymore. That's how stupid you people sound. Because that's what it was. Look it up, read it. Go back, read the original, intro. It is the 44th fucking millennium from Rogue Trader, and go down to the bottom, and it'll sit there and say they eat people in the name of the freaking Emperor. Well, I guarantee you that's not going to be in Amazon fucking either. And somewhere along the way, GW sat there and said, no, not a good idea. We're going to get rid of the cannibalism in our IP. So who cares? If that's woke, if that's wokeism, bring back cannibalism. I should be upset. They changed the lore on me. But yeah, if I remember the first 8 chapters, which are based upon Nemesis the Warlock, by the way, not anything that came from 40K, they had both genders in it. Okay? So, yeah, it doesn't matter. It all depends on where you pick up the book. And I picked up the original book. So from my standpoint, nothing here bothers. In fact, the first lore I ever heard about Custodes, and I don't know if it was actually the first time they came out, maybe it was just the first time I read their history, but I remember it being read as Custodes were chosen from traitors. The Emperor would defeat a traitor during the Unification Wars, somebody who was his enemy, and as a show of dominance, he would take their firstborn child and turn it into a Custodes, making it the most loyal of Imperial servants. as a final fuck you to a house of traitors, or from the other side as a second chance and act of redemption. Now, I remember actually thinking when I read this, what the fuck is this thing with only sons? So if a family only had daughters, the emperor would just say, yeah, you guys get a pass. It's okay. Your family only had daughters. Well, yeah. It really started. There was a point when GW really started getting gay. I mean, really, there was definitely a woman-hating sense. It wasn't there at the beginning, but somewhere along the way, it just felt like, Married with Children, Al Bundy, they had the Woman Haters Club. It just felt like everybody there had a bone to pick with women at GW. I noticed it. So I don't care. It's always been changing. And it's always been changing based upon social norms, not because it makes the game better. Where the fuck did the Tau come from? If this upsets you, I remember people being upset about the Tau. It was totally created because they're opening the Shanghai GW store when they announced they're closing the freaking Hong Kong store, and there was going to be opening a Shanghai store instead because they didn't want competition. I was playing in the Hong Kong store, by the way, which pissed me off. But they met, and then Hong Kong had to turn into a private game store because it would no longer be an official GW store. Where did that decision come from? And all of a sudden, we now need Mecca in GW. You think that decision was made because of lore? Because it improved the freaking game? No. The Tau came into existence, and I consider that a much bigger move than female Custodes, by the way. In the same way, it was just a political fucking decision. A money-making decision. Okay? We're going into the China market. Let's put something in there we think Chinese people are going to want to see. Mecca. We're going to create a whole fucking race just for your market. And blah, shove it into, well, they couldn't really shove it into the lore, but whatever. So not the first time, not the last time. And just like you can't remember anybody who's upset by the Tau now, you're not going to be able to remember anybody who's upset by this in the future. And that is my point of view. You're welcome. Bye-bye.